So this needs your undivided attention. There's this incredibly important new paper that just came out, peer-reviewed. It's by a group of 3 academics from the United States and from Germany. The title is a bit of a mouthful. Endonuclease fingerprint indicates a synthetic origin of SARS-CoV-2. The paper is mostly technical, but fortunately it has a summary for the lay people right at the start. Here's some of it. Quote, to construct synthetic variants of natural coronaviruses in the lab, researchers often use a method called in vitro genome assembly. This method utilizes special enzymes called restriction enzymes to generate DNA building blocks that then can be stitched together in the correct order of the viral genome. To make a virus in the lab, researchers usually engineer the viral genome to add and remove stitching sites called restriction sites. The ways researchers modify these sites can serve as fingerprints of in vitro genome assembly. Listen to this. We found that SARS-CoV-2 has the restriction site fingerprint that is typical for synthetic viruses. Unquote. This is obviously hugely important. Look around. You can see it bubbling up. More and more papers stating what can still get you censored on Twitter. The virus came from a lab, and these shots can kill you. Dr. Jane Ruby says that this paper reveals something else, which traces directly back to Anthony Fauci. She joins us now to explain. Dr. Jane, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here.
This is a huge story, Stu. Big news that I'll be covering in detail on the Dr. Jane Ruby Show, of course, immediately after your show tonight. I had a discussion with Stanford Graham, and after a 22-month investigation led by Chair Jeffrey Sachs, who's the chair of the Lancet COVID-19 Commission, which is a task force investigating the origins of the COVID-19 organism, whatever it was, the committee came out to tell the world that it is almost certain that Ralph Baric, Fauci's gain-of-function czar, I call him, not only bioengineered a man-made toxic agent, but he also tried to cover the scientific fingerprints, and the proof is there that he tried to cover it behind. He's trying to hide the technique to create this in order to propagate the story that this jumped from an animal to a human in a Wuhan wet market. And the paper has just been out for 2 days in a preprint, which means it's already been peer reviewed. And as you said, you read the title rather, it tells you what it's about. The Lancet's 22-month investigation actually concluded that COVID-19 was not only laboratory generated, and that Baric tried to hide it with a process he invented called seamless ligation methodology. That, by the way, Stu, he's publicly boasted, quote, could perfectly conceal all evidence of human tampering in laboratory-created viruses. But he's not as clever as he thinks. I will go into detail on the show, how the crime has been unveiled and how this implicates the University of North Carolina that drank at Fauci's NIH teat. By the way, don't forget, universities take hundreds of millions of dollars from these grants, where researchers have to turn over about 75% of the grant to the university for what's called overhead costs. Fauci and Baric, Stu, are the criminals that first should be marched in front of everyone, indicted, tried, and fried. This is an outrageous, you're going to hear a lot about this. These guys, if they don't get indicted, it's over.
Endonuclease fingerprint indicates a synthetic origin of SARS-CoV-2. So when we said that this was an intentionally created, man-engineered genetic sequence that came from a computer, an AI biosynthetic parasite, as Karen Kingston has proven with patents, we weren't overstating any of that. And now this peer-reviewed paper supports all of the claims, the predictions, the reporting that this program has been doing for the last year and a half. I mean, without question, this is 100% vindication. Is that right?
100%. And it's 100% implication that this was intentional, that it was meant for nothing good, that it violated U.S. laws on gain of function, that both, Fauci's implicated because he paid for it, that he moved our monies into it. And of course, Baric and the University of North Carolina. Where the hell are all you people? Your university has been violating U.S. laws and international treaties galore in allowing this monster to develop this. And then the guy is so arrogant, he tried to use, and by the way, Stu, the other egregious thing is he taught, there's proof that he taught some of the Wuhan scientists how to use his little technique to hide when you make something synthetically. The seamless ligation, he calls it the no-see-em approach. This guy is so arrogant. He's the number one face of the pain, suffering, and mass genocide next to his friend Anthony Fauci.
So let's talk about our so-called elected representatives at this point. Who are the firebrands that we often hear about in the fake conservative press? We hear about people like Rand Paul. We hear about people like Jim Jordan. We hear about Ron Johnson, who has probably single-handedly done the most to actually bring this to the forefront. We've talked about Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Where are these people now? This should be the biggest story, period. There should not be one elected, heavy air quotes for our radio listening audience, not one elected, selected, installed, uniparty, globalist, elitist representative that is not opening their mouths right now and running this. I mean, I'm talking about a dead sprint to the closest fake media camera that they can find to go in front of the entire world and say, look, this, quote, to construct a synthetic variant of a natural coronavirus in the lab, researchers often use a method called in vitro genome assembly. They assembled this, they put it together. This has never been a respiratory virus. This was a bioweapon, a biosynthetic parasite that was intentionally released on global humanity that instigated lockdowns, that caused suicide of an unprecedented amount of people. Small businesses owned by patriots and constitutional people, God-fearing Christians, were completely shut down and taken away from them. This rolled out this fear porn, which then pushed these shots onto everybody that is the same replication with different spike proteins that have a different spike protein patent that act differently than the natural so-called virus. They killed our loved ones in hospitals. They put them on poisonous remdesivir and ventilators, and they murdered them after separating them from our families. And we now know with absolute certainty, thanks to this peer-reviewed paper in a medical journal that is ready for preprint, that this was all intentional. And that Ralph Baric and Tony Fauci and God knows who their handlers are above them that may never be named are responsible for all of it. And that the most heavily invested people into this are the people who stand right before the planet and tell everyone that only 500 million people should occupy Earth. And that means killing 7.5 billion of us, our children. Where are these elected representatives?
This is the smoking gun, Stu. This is it.
Every single operative in the fake press that is a mouthpiece for this so-called government. It's a fake government. It's a murderous, globalist corporate government crime syndicate that is profiting billions of dollars. Just look at who's the most heavily invested. As a matter of fact, if you follow me on Gab or Telegram or Getter or Truth Social, I just published today the list of all of the, quote, congressional Republicans, if you believe in that fake construct, that are funded by Bill Gates. And the list is long.
Wow.
Go there. Make sure that you check it out. Dr. Jane, we have no more government that's representative of the people. We have no more medical institutions. We have no more healthcare doctors who care about healthcare. These people are all being silenced. They're all being threatened. Where are the brave doctors with the testicular fortitude to come forward now after this peer-reviewed paper is out and say, this is a bioweapon? Where are they? Do you predict that they'll come out?
You know, Stu, I actually do. I don't think they're going to come out in huge numbers right now, but look at what this committee did. And Jeffrey Sachs, the chair of it, of the Lancet. We've seen evidence that the Lancet aspects of it have been bought and paid for in the past, but this committee's very brave. They put this all together. They took their time, and they're calling it. They're calling it. They're basically saying it's man-made, and there's evidence of tampering with the procedure to make it look like it was not man-made. This could never, Stu, have happened in natural wildlife. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that fast. So this was a lie from the beginning. And like you said, tremendous loss. People need to stand up and stand up with investigators like this.
Man, I am pissed off.
Me too.
I tell you, because it does not feel sweet to be vindicated in this manner. This doesn't make me feel good that we've been saying that this is a chimerically engineered gain-of-function thing. God only knows what it is. I mean, we have patents to suggest that it's a biosynthetic parasite. We have all kinds of information now that proves that this was absolutely intentional. And all of the aforementioned, all of the things that I just mentioned, from the lockdowns to the masking, to the bioweapon injections, the mandates, the boosters, people dying all over the place, dying suddenly. I mean, we have a 1-hour documentary that's coming in November. I predict that more people will watch this documentary than watched or viewed the Titanic. But it could have gone on for an entire week. We could have had a documentary that lasts for 2 weeks. Instead, it'll only be limited to 1 hour. So I have a challenge. I have a challenge for every single elected representative, specifically those of you that call yourselves conservative Republicans or America First patriots. Where are you? My challenge is that now that you know, here's the peer-reviewed paper, here is the proof that this was absolutely whipped up by psychopaths and intentionally released to cause the murder and death and destruction that all of these protocols have now resulted in. I have a challenge to all of the Tucker Carlsons of the world. Where are you, these so-called fake conservative news outlets? How about Steve Bannon? Steve Bannon, you're a warrior for truth, right? Fighting to destroy the CCP, where all of this came from. Because Ralph Baric and Tony Fauci taught the CCP how to concoct and release this bioweapon on the masses. So you want to take them down? Where are you on this proof that this gain-of-function bioweapon was concocted by man and released upon the world? Where are you? More of the Stu Peters Show in 60 seconds. Man, am I teed up.